Hi, everyone. This is Suzanne Etkin, Executive Director of the Watershed Stewards Academy, with a short presentation on what is a capstone project. The capstone project for watershed steward candidates is used to help people practice the skills and knowledge that they're gaining through the certification course, and also to introduce themselves to their community as a master watershed steward. I always say at the beginning that you want to pick a capstone project based on helping your community learn what they can do. And so while you might be really interested in doing a rain garden, if a rain garden project isn't something that you think most of your neighborhood could do, or if other community members couldn't do that kind of practice, you want to probably rethink that as a demonstration and really think about what are the habits or projects, practices that you think your community could broadly implement that could be engaged in by a number of people in your community. So the track that you choose in this course is really going to determine whether you do a rainscaping project or an environmental literacy project. Both tracks are going to engage in all of the same coursework. The difference is in the project that you pick. So all of the capstone projects have 4 elements, and they're typically the same 4 elements except for number 3. Both capstone projects are going to have an assessment, so both an environmental assessment and a social assessment. Both are going to have some community engagement, so reaching out to your community, introducing yourself, raising some awareness about who you are and what are the issues in your community. And then the third is action. So for rainscapers, you're going to be installing a project. For environmental literacy folks, are going to be doing an educational program to students or to adults. And then the last and most important thing I think is reflection and reporting. So you're going to reflect on what you did, think about what's next, and also summarize your actions. And that's reporting on the impact of what you did in your community. So at the beginning of your capstone project, you're going to define your community. Are you going to use your congregation, your neighborhood? Is it a school or library? Is it at your place of business? So picking what community you want to focus on is the first part. Now, some people in the environmental literacy track may not have a group of students that they want to work with, or they know they want to work with. So if you're unsure of what community you're choosing, you can feel free to reach out to any of us, and we can help you discuss that and figure out what a community that you want to focus on. So for your community assessment, the community assessment is the first part of your capstone proposal. And your capstone proposal is divided into 4 parts, and you're going to turn those parts in incrementally through the course. And that will help you plan your capstone project. So your community assessment is in 2 parts. One is the environmental assessment. That's on page 5, and you're going to either use the neighborhood source assessment to fill in that area, or you might use the residential site assessment, and that gets taught later in the course. So you may not be familiar with that yet, but you will be familiar. And then the second part is the social assessment. That begins on page 3. And basically, you're interviewing 5 to 7 people in your community, and you're summarizing some feedback about what's important to people, where do they get their information, what do they do. And so you want to pick 5 to 7 different people in your community to interview. So this is the Riva Trace community. Layla McCarthy is a watershed steward, and she's on our board of directors. And when she did her neighborhood assessment, this is a little bit about the summary that she made about her community. The number of homes, townhomes, single family homes and duplexes, some of the amenities. And then she walked around her community, and she made lots of observations. And what she found is that there was a lot of areas with unstabilized soil in the common areas. And she actually chose, because of that, to demonstrate how you could stabilize that bare soil using native plants. So that's the assessment. The second part is community engagement, and you're going to pick 3 outreach events or communications that might help you introduce yourself to WSA, and maybe share the results of your community assessment with your community. You're also going to, through these community engagements, you're going to introduce your project or educational program. What are you doing and why are you doing it? And then the last thing you might do with these engagements is celebrate your project with your community and introduce some next steps with the community about how they can take their own action. This is an example of a engagement that also Layla did in her community. She had a lot of invasive vines climbing up trees. And so she did a happy hour wine and vine where she invited another watershed steward to come out and demonstrate the process of removing vines from trees. And she gave people, they had a little wine, they had some nibbles, and they talked about English ivy. So of course you might do something slightly different in the time of COVID, but this is an example of something you could do perhaps when it's safe to gather again. Uh, and then action. So if you're on the rainscaping track, you're going to pick one action, one type of practice to install. And the right kind of action, right kind of project is one that is based on your community assessment, on your neighborhood source assessment. So something that a lot of other people in your community could feasibly do. You want it to be something that's visible in your community so that people, as they're walking around or driving around, could see it. They could be replicatable by other people in your community. So something that is not too large. So other people feel, oh, I could do this in my community. And then lastly, capture water where it falls. So looking at practices that are not down at the bottom next to your beach that, are after the water has become, big and unwieldy, but looking up in your neighborhood for those small areas where you can capture a little bit of water. We'll also be talking about the fact that your rainscaping project should not be too big or too tiny. And we actually have an FAQ document that you'll be reviewing, frequently asked questions that also gives sort of the scope or size of a project. You want a project that can be easily done within 6 months or so in your community because it should be done by November of 2021. And so you don't want to pick like a big living shoreline. Maybe that gets done after your capstone project. Also, you don't want to pick one rain barrel. One rain barrel is a little bit small for a capstone project. So you want to pick something that's, big enough to make an impact, small enough to be achievable within 1 year. Environmental literacy. So those on the environmental literacy track are going to pick a group of people that they want to do an educational program with. And the educational program often has 4 parts. You want to engage your group in learning about your topic. And it should be a topic, again, that's informed by your assessment. This is a group of students looking at water clarity at the St. Luke's project in Eastport. And then you want to make a plan for your group to take some kind of an action. And then with the group, maybe taking that action, this group decided that they wanted to plant some plants in their community. The action could be doing a trash pickup. It could be doing a pet waste campaign in your community. And then reflect on that group's action. So that's the general arc of an environmental literacy education. And then the last part of your capstone project is to reflect on what you did. What went well? What did you learn? What are your next steps? And then again, later in the course, we'll be introducing you to an online form where you'll just report all the vital stats about your project. How many people did you engage? How many plants did you plant? What are some of the other statistics about your capstone project? So that's just a very quick overview of the capstone project, and we'll talk about it more in class.